If you're anything like me, the thought of slaving away in the kitchen for hours after a hectic day is a little less than appealing. But what if I told you that I've got a little something to make your weekday anti-inflammatory eating a breeze? Introducing my free checklist, the must-have kitchen staples for effortless anti-inflammatory dinners. This is your ticket to stress-free weekday dinners and consistent success in the kitchen. Imagine not having to deal with last-minute grocery store runs or staring at your pantry in exhaustion. Imagine coming home from a demanding day, effortlessly whipping up an anti-inflammatory meal, and still having time to unwind, relax, and catch up on your favorite shows. All you have to do is head over to betterwithcarbo.com/checklist and claim your free copy of this invaluable resource. Let this checklist be your guide to transform your kitchen into a haven of effortless anti-inflammatory cooking and well-balanced meals. Get ready for a life where weekday anti-inflammatory eating is not just easier, but it's downright delightful. Your journey to a healthier, more vibrant you starts right now. Hello and Happy New Year. My name is Krissy. I am your host and friendly neighborhood dietitian, and this is the Inflamed in the Brain podcast. I'm Krissy Carbo, registered dietitian and host of the Inflamed in the Brain podcast. Here we cut through the confusion and complexity of inflammatory health to deliver straightforward, bite-sized strategies and information you can easily apply to your life. Not too long ago, I was lost in a sea of information, overwhelmed by the challenges of inflammation. But through years of trial, education, and self-discovery, I learned to break free from the chaos of fad diets and cultivate a practical anti-inflammatory lifestyle that not only helped me stabilize my own diagnosis, but thrive with it. Whether you're an autoimmune warrior or simply seeking a healthier, uncomplicated life, you found your tribe. Join me as we explore realistic strategies that can make a profound difference in your life. So if you're ready to embrace a simpler, healthier way of living, you're in the right place, my friend. Let's dive in, learn, and grow together. Welcome to the Inflamed in the Brain podcast. Let's get started. If you're wondering why I sound a little stuffy and raspy, I hope, getting over a cold at this point. My whole family is sick, but I'm here today with my cup of tea because I wanted to talk to you about a non-restrictive approach to anti-inflammatory eating. With all of this new year, new me energy in the air as we are moving into 2024, I think that it's a really good time to talk about a non-restrictive approach to improving your health. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think that there is anything wrong with using the fresh start of a new year as a chance to explore some new self-care habits. However, the new year also tends to be a time where a lot of people want to improve their health, so they start a new diet. And with dieting comes restriction. And as I've emphasized throughout this podcast, it's crucial to steer clear of over-restriction. And I want to clarify what I mean because as a dietitian, it would be remiss of me to claim that all restriction is bad because it's not, especially when it comes to inflammation. Some restrictions related to specific foods are not only normal, but they're necessary. For example, if you drink Coke every day and now you're trying to switch to seltzer water, or you're tired of feeling bloated and getting what I call poop attacks every time you eat dairy, so you're cutting back on dairy, you're making reasonable adjustments that align with respecting your body and benefit your well-being. I'm not referring to these sensible and necessary modifications, but what I'm talking about is the extreme side of it, the fear-driven restrictions that don't align with caring for your body. Or maybe they do start off with well-meaning intention, making restrictions to improve your health, but they end up becoming fear-driven. Societal pressures, our perfectionist tendencies, and deep-rooted beliefs about both food and ourselves can lead us to over-restrict food, even when following well-intentioned, evidence-based nutrition advice. That's where the real problem arises. Sometimes the issue really isn't the nutrition advice itself, it's our thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors around the foods that we're trying to limit for the sake of our health. When you go into overdrive with restriction, you're essentially cutting out entire food groups, convinced that even a hint of exposure will wreak havoc on your health, sparking inflammation and disease. Over-restriction can look like giving any and all packaged and convenience foods a hard pass, believing that they're all bad, eliminating entire food groups altogether, whether it's carbs, meat, gluten, soy, dairy, fat, or sugar, whatever. Scrutinizing ingredients lists to the point where even a tiny doubt labels something as bad, even if you want to eat it. It could also look like skipping social events like dinners with friends because you can't control the restaurant's food, finding yourself in situations where you're incredibly hungry and there are no, quote, good options, so you tend to choose nothing and stay hungry. And it could also look like dealing with cravings for a particular food by jumping through hoops, looking for healthier alternatives, or even convincing yourself of all the reasons why you shouldn't have that one food that you're craving. These behaviors, fueled by fear, anxiety, and stress and perfectionism, not only take a toll on our mental health, but also come back to bite us in the long run by contributing to inflammation. There are various pathways where over-restriction can incite inflammation. The initial pathway, nutritional deficiencies. Take the low-fat diet craze, for example. Low-fat dieting started back in the 1960s and was originally prescribed to people with high risk for heart issues. But by the 1990s, this advice had morphed into a universal recommendation for overall health. Everyone should be on a low-fat diet if they want to be healthier. Not only is this advice flat out wrong, but the truth is we need fat in order for our bodies to efficiently absorb nutrients, especially vitamins A, D, E, and K. These vitamins in particular are classified as fat-soluble vitamins, meaning that fat needs to be present in order for our bodies to take the nutrient in and put it to good use. If we don't have fat, we run the risk of becoming deficient in these nutrients that are needed for our bodies to function properly. We also need fat for energy metabolism, we need fat for brain development, growth, and repair, and we need fat for hormones and to cushion our organs. When fat is restricted, these essential functions are compromised, introducing an additional physiological stressor that contributes to inflammation. The low-fat diet phenomenon is just one example of how over-restriction can induce inflammation. There are so many different diet trends that emerge telling people to excessively limit foods that are often necessary for health, and this sets the stage for inflammation, symptomatic manifestation, meaning that you start to discover some symptoms, and ultimately, it leads to disease. Over-restriction can also lead to inflammation by the way of overeating, which is pretty ironic if you think about it. The foods that you very consciously remove from your diet for health reasons often become the foods that you can't stop eating when you find yourself around them. The Journal of Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics did a comprehensive review that showed a cascade of effects that come from over-restriction and dieting. This includes heightened preoccupation with food and increased distractibility, and we've all been there before, where we start a new diet and then all you think about is food and what your next meal is going to be. And amplified emotional responsiveness to food, which means that you tend to turn to food when you feel negative emotions. This all paves the way for us to cave in and overindulge on the very foods that we vowed that we would avoid. These restrictive behaviors also tap into our primal survival instincts. When we voluntarily impose dietary restrictions, our body interprets it as a signal of limited food availability. So naturally, your body will eat more in anticipation of potential scarcity, aka overeating. When it comes to inflammation, it's not only about providing our bodies with essential nutrients, but also selecting foods that authentically satisfy us. Ultimately, this helps us steer clear of inflammation through this nuanced interplay of overeating. Embracing a non-restrictive approach to alleviate inflammation also involves recognizing that mere restriction doesn't address or solve the underlying issues. While it is true that limiting exposures to inflammatory triggers like certain foods is a component of inflammation resolution, it is not the solution. Consider the example of gut healing. Gut healing is really an important aspect of resolving inflammation due to the fact that a large portion of your immune system lives in your gut, and leaky gut is a pivotal contributor to systemic inflammation. Removing individualized triggers is important, but an equally important part of healing your gut is incorporating foods that actively contribute to repairing the gut lining. It's not enough to only eliminate inflammatory foods. True progress comes from the synergistic combination of removal and addition, where you're adding healing foods to work to repair the gut. You can remove all the foods that you want, but at the end of the day, if you're not adding healing foods to restore the gut integrity, you're still going to experience inflammatory symptoms from leaky gut. And this tends to happen a lot of the times when people start a new diet, they focus on what they're not supposed to be eating. And although that might help you and you will see some improvement in the beginning, removing foods and restriction alone has its limitations. It's about a comprehensive approach that's going to help you move forward with resolving your inflammation. So now that we have a better understanding of how restriction not only supports inflammation, but also falls short of fully resolving it, let's talk about what a non-restrictive approach to anti-inflammatory eating really means. Does this mean that you can eat whatever you want and still be healthy? A non-restrictive approach to anti-inflammatory eating doesn't mean eating whatever you want whenever you want. It's about respecting your body in every aspect, which includes providing the essential nutrients for proper functioning and internal healing. It also involves embracing flexibility, allowing room for imperfection, and enjoying a diverse range of foods without rigid rules. You want to eat foods that make you feel good, right? You want to eat foods that satisfy your need and desire to heal and support your body and support your health. But there will be instances where you want to have something that satisfies other needs like comfort, happiness, nostalgia, and cravings. A non-restrictive approach helps you to fight inflammation while satisfying both sides of the spectrum. This approach aims to foster a healthier relationship with food and reduces the risk of inflammation by triggering overeating and stress. A non-restrictive approach to anti-inflammatory eating is also about cultivating abundance through balanced choices. Obviously, there are foods that we want to eat that may not be the poster child for anti-inflammatory health. But this approach encourages smarter ways to enjoy these foods so that you don't have to give them up altogether, which we now know will contribute to overeating and inflammation in the long run. Instead of having that desired food by itself, consider what else can be added to balance it out and enhance its anti-inflammatory properties. Does it benefit from pairing with a healthy fat or a protein? Could it use more color or fiber? I have another podcast episode where I go into greater detail on how to create an anti-inflammatory balanced plate, including the foods that you really want to eat, that I'll link to in the show notes if you're looking for more detail here. But by honoring your body with flexibility and embracing your appetite, you're paving the way for abundance in your health journey. And this not only simplifies the path to healing with food a little bit easier, but it also eases the challenges of coping with a new diagnosis. I remember when I was first diagnosed with MS, I was imposing all of these really strict restrictions on my diet, almost as if I was punishing myself for something that wasn't in my control. I was telling myself that because of my diagnosis, I can no longer enjoy what I eat. Food can no longer be pleasurable. It can only be medicinal moving forward after my diagnosis. This mindset made navigating life with my diagnosis incredibly challenging. And it wasn't until I started enjoying the foods that I craved in a balanced way that made managing my MS and embracing life with my new reality a little bit more manageable. So to recap, with a non-restrictive approach, finding satisfaction in what you eat is as crucial as, let's say, staying hydrated. As a dietitian and as someone managing autoimmunity herself, I have learned that satisfaction holds as much importance as any superfood out there when you're combating inflammation. In a non-restrictive approach, prioritizing satisfaction helps us steer clear of inflammatory triggers and overeating. Additionally, it aids in warding off nutrient deficiencies and fostering abundance through balanced meals. So, how can you start embracing a more non-restrictive approach to improve your health? Firstly, you want to start by honoring your food preferences. And don't get me wrong, it's perfectly fine to take your favorite dishes and experiment with even healthier versions or explore new alternatives. However, there will be days where you simply crave the thing. Respect your preferences and appetite and let yourself have the thing. Know that by honoring your preferences, you're avoiding an overeating episode later on. Have your favorite food, have that one food that you're craving, and just move on. For example, I love seltzer water. I love all the different flavors, and I get really excited when I see new flavors. I probably have a seltzer a day. But there are some days where I really just want a Coke. And on those days, I'll have my Coke with ice and a nice straw, and I'll enjoy it, take a breath, and I move on. And finally, to embrace a non-restrictive approach, shift your mindset from thinking about what you need to give up or stop eating for the sake of your health to what can you add to your plate to create a balanced and nourishing meal. I have another podcast episode that dives deeper into this mindset shift along with a few others, but essentially the key here is to recognize and reframe how we think about our food for long-term success. You want to get rid of restriction talk in all of its forms, including self-talk. And by reframing your thoughts from what do I need to give up because of my diagnosis or because of inflammation to what do I need more of? What can I get more of because of my diagnosis and inflammation? It just makes a world of difference. When so many people embark on a new way of eating, the default is to focus on things they shouldn't be eating. And this tends to lead to overwhelming feelings and even frustration. You feel frustrated with food, you feel frustrated in your situation. So instead of thinking what you need to give up on, redirect your attention to what should you be having more of. Do you need more fiber? Do you need more omega-3 fatty acids? Identify the foods that you should be incorporating into your diet rather than fixating on what to eliminate. So that is my take on non-restrictive eating for inflammation. I really wanted to start off the new year with this episode to help remove any pressure that you might be feeling to start a new diet in the new year. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with using the new year as an opportunity to start taking better care of yourself. But at the end of the day, when we go into self-care with restriction, it tends to just leave us feeling really stuck and frustrated. And eventually you're going to hit a glass ceiling. So with a non-restrictive approach, it removes those pressures to be perfect and to be good and to be on point all of the time, which helps you not lose. You really can't lose when you go into your health with a non-restrictive approach. And remember, it's not a free-for-all where you're eating whatever you want, whenever you want. There are some necessary dietary shifts and tweaks that we need to make in order to significantly improve our health. But we also need to recognize and honor our food preferences and create more balanced plates with the foods that we love so that we stay satisfied while we're meeting our anti-inflammatory goals. We need to account for satisfaction, otherwise we end up with insatiable cravings and overeating episodes that cause more inflammation in the long run. Once we give ourselves unconditional permission to eat our favorite foods and we tell ourselves that our foods are always around if and when we want them, this removes scarcity, which contributes to overthinking and preoccupation about food and will help avoid inflammation by pathways triggered from stress and overeating. I really hope you found this episode helpful. Thanks so much for sticking with me through my nasally and raspy episode. If you did find this episode helpful, please leave a review and share it with a friend who can benefit from this sort of approach to finding more happiness and health in the new year. You can also find me on Instagram at BetterWithCarbo. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to check out the show notes for links mentioned in the episode. Until next time, guys, same time, same place. Happy New Year.